Get out. Yeah, you.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. We have a great show for you today, so let's get to it. First, as we discussed last night on our live program, our Tuesday Night Live, Justin Timberlake was arrested for a DUI in the Hamptons. The judge in the Young Thug trial is making a big mess of that whole trial. And fortunately, this little thing didn't catch on. You know, the old break into the house, inject somebody with something, and then ask for a ransom to give them the antidote. Yeah, it happened. What would you think if your boyfriend from 23 years ago was accused of killing your mother 23 years ago? That's right. And our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Scott Reich. This is Crime Talk. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below, and remember to hit that little bell for notifications. Now, as you may recall, I've said this throughout the last week, Frank, the hardest working man in show business, will be back tomorrow, be in the control center. I've had the con for the last week, and well, we've had a couple of issues, but we're working our best. We got the headphones. We think we got the mic all set up again today. Had a little issue last night, but we're making progress. But he will be back tomorrow. All right. Now, remember, we did do a live last night. You can go check that out. We talked about the Justin Timberlake trial, and I also kind of gave you the anatomy of the breakdown of a DUI stop and explained it to you, well, just so everybody could do it. And we have the general rules, right? Don't drink and drive. That's always the best one. Never admit that you were drinking. Don't take the voluntary roadside maneuvers, in fact, because they are voluntary. And then you have to decide whether you're going to take the test. Now, certainly if you're stone cold sober, you want to take that test. But if you are over the moon, you know, you may want to have some serious thought about that, because it's one more thing more than the officer saying, I smelled bloodshot watery eyes, slurred speech, and an odor and an unknown alcoholic beverage. So just something to think about. I think it may go down as one of the classic Crime Talk live shows that we have done. All right, so let's get to it today. For June 19th, 2024, let's go ahead and open the record. And first on the docket, that's right, Justin Timberlake was arrested for a DUI the other evening, and his lawyer has spoken out after the star was arrested on the driving while impaired charges there in New York. Now, the office of Edward Burke, apparently some big highfalutin fancy attorney there who also just happens to have his office there as well, says that he obviously looks forward to vigorously defending Mr. Timberlake against these allegations, and he will have a lot to say at the appropriate time. And he is currently waiting full discovery from the district attorney's office. Now, that, ladies and gentlemen, is spoken like a true professional attorney, not out there beating his fists against the table saying, my client will be vindicated. He's been wrongfully accused. He's like, hey, I'm looking forward to zealously representing my client, but I'm going to wait until I have all the evidence. And I'm sure I've got a lot to say at the appropriate time, but I'm not going to make promises that I can't keep. And then I'm going to have to come back and say, oop, I guess we made a mistake on that. Or, oop, the evidence shows my client may be completely guilty. Now, obviously, we'll give Justin Timberlake the presumption of innocence. And why? Because who doesn't like Justin Timberlake? I know NSYNC wasn't my thing, but I think the guy's super talented. He was really good in that Facebook movie, Social, I think it was called. I don't know. It was really good. And he's talented. You know, he can sing, he can dance, he can act. Who doesn't like this guy, right? And he's had some issues with alcohol by his own admissions. So we're rooting for him. All right. Maybe this is a wake up call. Maybe Mr. Timberlake, the stress of being a star, alcohol is not your substance that you should be using. Maybe you should be going for a run, or maybe give it up. I don't know. You're under a lot of pressure. You're under a lot of pressure, but you can't drink and drive. All right. So Timberlake, as we noted last night, I think we were one of the first to bring it to you when we talked about it last night on our live, was taken into custody shortly after midnight in Sag Harbor, New York. Now, Mr. Timberlake was charged with one count of driving while intoxicated and two other traffic violations, including not stopping for that pesky stop sign. Who put that there? And failure to stay in a proper lane. Excuse me. I don't know if this officer knows this, but he was driving a BMW. Okay. That's an excuse for everything. Okay. I use it all the time. Excuse me, officer. Yeah, I was speeding, but I don't know if you know this, but I was driving a BMW. And I say that jokingly, okay? Because when I first met the lovely Miss Kristen, she thought, oh, you drive a BMW, you must be a real ass. And I said, no, I'm not a real ass. I drive a BMW. So anyway, it's a joke. It's a joke, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, Mr. Timberlake was photographed leaving the Sag Harbor Village Police Department on Tuesday morning. Now, Mr. Burke, the attorney, is a very prominent Hamptons attorney who has represented Matt Lauer, Lizzie Grubman, Jason Kidd, and a slew of other VIP clients. And coincidentally, his office just happens to be there in Sag Harbor. Anyway, Timberlake was arraigned early Tuesday morning and released from custody on his own recognizance. His next court date is not set until July 26th, and he will not even have to appear because it's more of a procedural hearing of getting a date to get a new date. Well, as we brought you to last night, Timberlake was pulled over after having dinner with some friends on Monday night at the Sag Harbor Historic American Hotel, where the police were apparently sitting outside. And apparently, Mr. Timberlake, like I said, who was driving his gray 2025 BMW, failed a field sobriety test and reportedly refused to take the breathalyzer test. And I say, good on you, Timberlake. Good on you. Don't take that breathalyzer test. Now you gotta do what you gotta do. There's consequences for that. But if you think you're going to be to the moon on that breathalyzer, what would you rather have? Your license suspended for a little while, which is probably going to get suspended anyway, or one less piece of evidence against you. But Mr. Timberlake, as we explained last night, never, ever, ever, ever take those voluntary roadside maneuvers because they're voluntary. So just something to think about, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, and apparently the officer didn't know who Mr. Timberlake was and didn't recognize him. And hey, it is what it is. Not everybody's going to know you're famous, right? Happens to me all the time. Don't you know who I am? I have a YouTube show and I drive a BMW and you don't know who I am? No, just kidding, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody knows who I am and we like it that way. Anyway, apparently Mr. Timberlake claimed to have consumed only one martini at the Long Island Hotel following, obviously, heading out from friends. However, police noticed that he had bloodshot and glassy eyes, which could be seen in his mugshot. In addition to that, let's take a look at the mugshot. Here we go. Yes, we did this by ourselves without Frank, the hardest working man in show business. Look at Mr. Timberlake's eyes. Does he look like he has bloodshot, watery eyes? You be the judge. Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, apparently he also had a strong odor of an unknown alcoholic beverage on his breath during the investigation, according to the police documents. But apparently he was very polite, which is always good. Police officers have a tough enough job. They don't need some drunk on the side of the road giving them a hard time. Apparently he was described as a gentleman. Okay. He didn't show any entitlement at all. He didn't say, don't you know who I am? Don't you know that I'm driving a BMW, a 2025? You can't even get a 2025 BMW. Don't you know who I am? I must be really important. Anyway, we wish Mr. Timberlake the best. I think it's going to be interesting to see. My guess is he'll probably work out some sort of plea bargain. He will apologize and it will all work out for him, but he's going to have to reevaluate his life with alcohol. We discussed that last night. It's ruined lots of people's lives. And hopefully this will be his wake-up call that maybe he just shouldn't do this, even though he's already admitted to himself that maybe alcohol is not what he needs in his life. All right, next on the docket, the young judge has denied the motion to recuse himself from the trial, and this judge is making a mess of it. So the young thug lawyer, a guy by the name of Brian Steele, filed a motion the other day on behalf of his client to have the Fulton County Superior Judge, Judge Earl Granville, removed from the RICO trial over the judge's alleged misconduct. Now, Judge Glanville denied the motion on Tuesday morning, saying that the claim in the motions were insufficient. Well, Mr. Steele, the attorney for Mr. Young Thug, filed the motion to disqualify and recuse the judge over an alleged improper meeting between the judge, so Judge Glanville, the district attorney, the prosecutor, and a witness who had already been on the witness stand since the previous Monday. Now, this all began when the witness, Mr. Copeland, also known as Lil Woody, refused to testify on June 7th. He was held in contempt of court and forced to spend the weekend in jail. Well, Mr. Copeland, who is a convicted felon, reportedly gave police information about Young Thug and his associations to avoid going back to prison himself after he got caught with a gun while he was on parole. And didn't he know when you're on parole or a convicted felon, you can't have a gun? My God, Mr. Littlewood, come on. Anyway, after Copeland returned to the witness stand on June 10th and began testifying, Steele, the attorney for Young Thug, confronted Judge Glanville about the ex parte meeting that was reportedly held that morning to convince Mr. Copeland to testify. Now, the judge became quite upset, did a little gaslighting on Mr. Steele when Mr. Steele refused to tell him who informed the lawyers about the meeting and held Steele in contempt of court, stating that he would spend the next 20 days or 10 weekends in jail. Now, you would think a judge that was completely on board, legit, would say, yes, there was a meeting, and let me tell you why it took place, even though it shouldn't have taken place ex parte, meaning one of the parties, the defense side, wasn't there. Remember, there's like 6 other defendants in this particular case, and none of them were invited either. It makes it look improper indeed. But the judge didn't say it was completely legit. Let me put on the record what the conversation was, who was present, and why no one else was there. Instead, he gaslights Mr. Steele and saying, I'm going to hold you in contempt because I want to know who told you about this meeting. The judge needs to go. Anyway, in the motion filed by Mr. Steele, the court is accused of being so biased against the undersigned counsel and or Mr. Williams, the court ignored all laws and pursued contempt penalties to attempt to intimidate the counsel, to violate the law and his ethics in order to continue to help the prosecution convict Mr. Williams, aka Young Thug, as well as the other co-defendants in the case. Now, a couple of days later, Steele confronted the judge again in court about how Copeland was being treated by the district attorney's office, comparing it to communist Russia. Anyway, the judge didn't like that either. But guess what? The Georgia Supreme Court may be coming to the rescue because they granted Mr. Steele's writ of certiorari to address the appeal of the contempt order. Now, the motion claims there have been other instances where the judge has demonstrated a personal bias or prejudice towards Mr. Steele and or his client. Anyway, after denying the motion, Judge Glanville invited the lawyers to look at Baptiste v. State. It's a case. The judge also said that he would not grant a motion for certification of immediate review. Additionally, Judge Glanville said that he would address a separate motion made to quash after the court has finished with the current witness. Then Mr. Steele, the attorney for Young Thug, asked the judge to take another look at the motion, specifically paragraph 12, and reconsider his decision. He also informed the judge that he plans to ask Copeland about how much pressure the court put on him when it is his chance to cross-examine Mr. Copeland, and that he plans to put the court and the prosecution on his witness list. And the judge has made himself a witness because there were 3 people in that room, and the DA should have to be a witness as well. Can you say mistrial? Anyway, Mr. Steele also objected to Judge Glanville, saying he would review the transcript of the ex parte meeting before turning them over to the defense. Anyway, Judge Glanville continued to deny the motion from Mr. Steele, and Judge Glanville also addressed a motion to quash the attorney Kayla Bumpus, a show cause order he issued related to the ex parte meeting. Now, Judge Glanville issued the show cause order to those present at the meeting, ordering them to show cause why they should not be held in contempt for disclosing the meeting to Young Thug's attorneys. Judge Glanville told the team of lawyers who appeared on behalf of Bumpus that he would address the motion to quash after the court was done with the current witness. Now, you have to remember, this trial began back in November of 2023. And after the longest jury selection in history, it's been plagued with arrests, charges, and disruptions. Now, the entire process has been somewhat unusual. Now, remember, in ex parte meetings, communications are highly disfavored. In fact, they should never really happen, but for the most emergent circumstances. And that's why you can have an ex parte like protection order granted, but very rarely does that take place. It's an emergency. There must be something so dire that there's just not enough time to get everybody together to have a hearing on it. Anyway, like I said, you can't have a judge sitting as an adjudicator, as supposedly impartial, calling balls and strikes at a criminal trial, who has now also made himself a witness. And now Judge Glanville denied the recusal motion. The defense will likely ask a higher court to step in through what's known as the writ of mandamus there in Georgia. Anyway, the Fulton County grand jury indicted, just a little background, back in May of 22, and more charges were added in a subsequent indictment in August of the same year. Now, the second indictment accused Young Thug and 27 other people of conspiring to violate Georgia's Racketeering, Influence, and Corruption Organization Act, also known as RICO. Now, the rapper is also accused of participation in criminal street gang activity, as well as drug and gun charges. And prosecutors allege that Young Thug and two other people co-founded the violent criminal street gang in 2012 called Young Slime Life, or YSL, which they say is associated with the National Bloods gang. The indictment says that Young Thug made YSL a well-known name by referring to it in his songs and on his social media. And in addition to specific charges, the August indictment includes a wide-ranging list of 191 acts that the prosecutors say were committed between 2013 and 2022 as part of the alleged conspiracy to further the gang's criminal enterprise. Including in that list are allegations that Young Thug threatened in July of 2015 to shoot a security guard who was trying to get him to leave an Atlanta area mall. The indictment also says that Young Thug rented a silver Infiniti sedan that was used in the killing of a rival gang member, and on numerous occasions, he and others are alleged to have possessed various illegal drugs that they intended to distribute. Now, the other defendants still facing trial include a slew of at least 10 other people, and the other defendants who have already pled guilty to various charges prior to jury selection include a guy by the name of Gunna, whose given name is Sergio Kitchens, Young Thug's older brother, Quatavius Greer, also known as Unfunk, Trontavarius Stevens, a.k.a. Tick, and Antonio Sledge, Mount Tonk. Now, a mistrial occurred when a trial is a mistrial can occur when a trial is rendered invalid due to a significant error or problem that prevents a fair conclusion of the trial. Now, a fair trial is paramount in the legal system, and a mistrial indicates that fairness may have been jeopardized, hence the reason for a mistrial. Anyway, a mistrial can be declared under various circumstances, including juror bias, a hung jury, which means they're unable to reach a unanimous verdict, procedural error that could sway the trial outcome, misconduct by any party involved, external interferences, or health concerns of a key participant in the trial. Now, for the parties involved, the declaration of a mistrial is kind of a reset button on the case, and a retrial with a fresh jury might have to be rescheduled sometime after, maybe the possibility of plea bargaining. Through some cases, the charges might be dismissed outright if the fair trial isn't feasible. Now, obviously, there's other implications of a mistrial. that can be far-reaching. Not only does it potentially mean a return to square one, but it also brings additional costs and additional emotional strain on everyone involved in the legal process there. And I can tell you from the defense perspective, the defense never fares better on a retrial. It really just doesn't happen. We'll see. We'll see. The judge has made a big mess of this, and we'll see what the Georgia Supreme Court does. Hopefully they'll issue an order rather quickly. But it seems like the judge is realizing that he should be not so upset as to why the judge was in chambers with somebody else, and having the other attorneys who told Young Thug attorneys, Mr. Steele, what took place. I'm just aghast. I can't believe that the judge would think that would be okay. The good thing is apparently there's a transcript. So a court reporter was in there. So at least he knew he should be on the record. But it is just weird in the fact that it was supposed to be done in secret, whether all the co-defendants weren't supposed to know about it. Yeah, that's just wrong. I say mistrial. And then the Young Thug trial can take another 5 years to do. All right. Yes, I'm so glad that this little scheme did not catch on. That's when somebody breaks into your house, jabs you with a needle, then wakes you up and says that you've been injected with a lethal virus. But don't worry, for a couple $1,000,000, we'll give you the antidote. Whew. Yeah, it really happened. So this guy, Stefan Alexandru Barbas, he's a citizen of Romania. He pled guilty yesterday in the United States District Court in Connecticut to a charge stemming from a home invasion back in 2007. Took a little while to get everybody back. So according to court records and statements made in court as it relates to related cases, shortly before midnight on April 15th, 2007, Mr. Barbas, another guy by Nicolescu and Alexander Lucian Nicolescu, were wearing masks and brandished knives and had some firearms as well. They entered a home in Connecticut, and then the intruders bound and blindfolded two adult victims and injected them with a substance the intruders claimed was a deadly virus. And then the intruders ordered the victims, hey, if you got an extra $8.5 million laying around, we'll take that so we can give you the antidote and you don't die from this legal injection. Now, you would think that the people doing this would think, hey, maybe these guys got $8.5 million hanging around. I don't know. Maybe they're like a senator or something, a couple of gold bars here and there. Who knows? Anyway, when it became clear that the victims were not in a position to meet the intruders' demands, i.e. don't have $8.5 million hanging around, the intruders then drugged the residents with a sleeping aid, and the intruders then left the house in a stolen Jeep from the house, from the homeowners. Anyway, the stolen Jeep, in this case it was a Cherokee, was abandoned at a Home Depot in New Rochelle, New York the next morning. And on April 21st, 2007, according an accordion case washed ashore in Jamaica Bay. The content of the case included a stun gun, a 12-inch knife, a black plastic airsoft gun, a crowbar, syringes, sleeping pills, latex gloves, and a laminated telephone card with the South Kent address of the victims. So back in 2010, an investigation from the Connecticut State Police connected a partial Pennsylvania license plate seen by a witness near the victim's estate on the night of the crime to a car owned by the guy by the name of Michael N. Kennedy. Kennedy had formerly shared his address with Mr. Nicolescu, who the victim had employed. The investigators then discovered that the data from the cell phone tower near the New Rochelle Home Depot contained a call by a phone number registered to Mr. Nicolescu minutes after the Jeep was abandoned. What a coincidence. Shortly after that, investigators from the state police and the FBI gathered Emmanuel Nicolescu's DNA and found that it partially matched a sample from the Jeep's steering wheel. As to the accordion case that was found, investigators learned that the Kennedy's father was a professional accordion player. And witnesses later identified the knife in the accordion case as a gift to Mr. Emmanuel Niculescu by his father-in-law. The investigation revealed that Mr. Niculescu and Kennedy worked with Barbas and Alexandru Niculescu to commit the crime. Now, Barbas co-conspirators planned the home invasion, which included the research and purchase of the implements necessary for the crime, such as a two-way radio, stun guns, and the imitation pistols. On the night of April 15th of 2007, Kennedy drove Niculescu and the other Niculescu to a location near the South Kent home and then picked them up the following morning in New Rochelle at the location where they abandoned the Jeep. During the investigation, the Niculescus and Kennedy fled the United States. Well, Mr. Emmanuel Niculescu returned to the U.S. and was arrested in Illinois in 2011. Emmanuel Niculescu and Kennedy were charged in indictment back in February of 2011, and Barbas and Alexandru Niculescu were charged with another indictment in November of 2012. Now, Barbas was a fugitive until his arrest in Hungary in 2022, and Barbas pled guilty to conspiracy to interfere with commerce by extortion, an offense that carried a maximum penalty of up to 20 years in the Bureau of Prisons. And under the terms of the binding plea agreement, if accepted by the court, the parties have agreed that a sentence of between 72 and 84 months is appropriate. So between 6 and 7 years. Now, the judge scheduled the sentencing hearing for September 11th, and Mr. Barbas has been detained since his arrest. Now, back in March of 2012, a jury in New Haven found Emmanuel Niculescu guilty of attempted extortion, conspiracy to commit extortion, and possession of a stolen vehicle. And on August 17th of 2022, he was sentenced to 240 months. Ouch. Seems like the longer you stay away, the smaller the prison sentence gets, doesn't it? Anyway, Niculescu was arrested in 2013 in the United Kingdom. And in 2016, he pled guilty to attempted extortion and conspiracy to commit extortion. He was sentenced to 121 months. What can you do, ladies and gentlemen? Anyway, make a long story short, the reality of it is all these guys are going to prison. It's taken a while to do that. The long arm of the law is a little slow sometimes, but they always find them. Next on the docket, what would you think if your old boyfriend was accused of killing your mom 23 years ago? That's right. A man has been arrested in connection with a 2001 cold case murder in Chevy Chase, Maryland, bringing a breakthrough to an investigation that has left the victim's family somewhat in shock. So the Montgomery County Police were called to the home in Chevy Chase 23 years ago when they found Leslie Preer murdered after she failed to show up for work. For years, the case went cold with no leads until DNA evidence from the scene recently matched a guy by the name of Eugene Kilgore. He's now 44 years old. And guess what? He's kind of known to the family. That's right. Lauren Preer, the victim's daughter, expressed some disbelief when it was revealed that Kilgore was in fact her ex-boyfriend. She said, "It's been a hell of a day," she said. "He was my ex-boyfriend." I'm not sure that's the only thing I'd be thinking if your ex-boyfriend, girlfriend was responsible for the death of your mother. Anyway, apparently Lauren and Eugene grew up in the same neighborhood, with Lauren living in Somerset and Eugene near in Kentwood. They began dating when Lauren was 15 and their families were acquainted. Now, Kilgore was arrested by United States Marshals on Tuesday and charged with first-degree murder. The Montgomery County Police Department credits advances in DNA technology for helping to crack the case 23 years later. Apparently, detectives used blood recovered from the scene in 2001 and submitted it to a lab in 2022. It was forensic genealogy, apparently, that helped get the name of the DNA relation to link the victim. Anyway, The investigative work was tedious and requiring a lot of work from the detectives. And the detectives say that we will go many years, whether it's 20 or 40, to find the answers and to hold people accountable for violent incidents that happened in the past. Now, Lauren recounted a recent encounter. That's right. The daughter of the victim had a recent encounter with the man now accused of killing her mother 23 years ago, this Mr. Kilgore guy, at a restaurant in D.C. last year. She said, I've spoken to him. He didn't seem weird. And how could you look someone in the eye and know that you committed the crime and act like nothing happened? It's pretty unreal, Lauren has stated. Anyway, Lauren says that she's filled with many emotions, but there is a sense of relief and hopefully justice will be coming soon. Now, Mr. Kilgore is currently in a jail in the District of Columbia, D.C., and he's waiting to be extradited to Maryland where he will appear in front of a judge. That's going to be an interesting one. Once again, that genealogical DNA coming through again. But for this guy to still keep in contact. So how's your mom? Oh, I'm sorry. I know she killed her years ago. Yeah, weird, isn't it? But he probably just wanted to see if there's any breaks, any new information going on. My guess is he was tipped off and he was trying to find out. I bet investigators were peeking around and he thought this would be a good time to get together and see if anything's new. We'll have to follow that one. And next, I'm not sure if this really is the dumb criminal of the day. Maybe the person that is responsible, some unidentified person, it should be a crime. Okay. So there was a Texas tow truck driver, and he saw what appeared to be a woman's body in the front passenger seat of an abandoned Porsche. So what do you do when you find what you think is a body in an abandoned car, let alone a Porsche? You call 911 and say, this is what I see. The driver believed that he saw a body that had been wrapped in blankets, and he could still see hair was visible from outside the vehicle. So he really wasn't sure. Anyway, when the police responded to Ray's Wrecker Service, they ultimately applied for a search warrant because they thought maybe a crime had been committed and they don't want to just enter into the car. And so this was a red 2000 Porsche Boxster with Ohio plates, and it was left outside the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witness Church. Not really sure if that has any significance whatsoever, but maybe he was trying to cleanse his soul. I don't know. The owner of the Porsche, I don't know. Anyway, the cops noticed that the Porsche's passenger door had an interior padlock on it, and looking towards the passenger side floorboard, there was what appeared to be part of a leg, according to the officer in the affidavit. And that's why they thought it was a death investigation. Anyway, after waiting several hours for the warrant to be signed, officers finally entered the vehicle to determine if there was, in fact, a real crime taking place. Thank goodness, ladies and gentlemen, there was no real crime. But maybe it should be a real crime to have a blow-up sex doll and something called a real doll. And the fact that you lock it in to the car inside, even weirder. Anyway, this apparently full-size realistic sex toy was subsequently described as an adult novelty mannequin. And the sex doll was left in the Porsche, where it was photographed wearing two hats and had a pair of sunglasses pushed above its unblinking eyes. Now, the doll's brown locks apparently cascaded down the front of its long sleeve t-shirt that it was wearing. And like I said, I'm not really sure if it's a crime, but the unidentified driver of the Porsche with a full-blown real sex doll in it that you have dressed up in clothes and sunglasses, maybe it should be a crime to do that. Or maybe someone at least should be seeking some mental health therapy. Possibly. Anyway. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for you today. It's our live. We do it live because Frank's not here this week. But hey, I am getting so good at this. And yes, I see in the comments uncivil law. I went back and checked. You were right. We didn't have the mic set up correctly. I know. And it was a good live. We had a lot of people on the live too. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching. Hope you had a wonderful day. We'll see you next time. And yes, remember that pesky Constitution, it matters.